الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sorry about last week. I just had other commitments that came up, so I wasn't able to have the lesson. It's not really a good example to set, to be honest with you, when we're talking about the importance of studying knowledge and the etiquettes of studying the deen. One of them is to have steadfastness and to not miss lessons unless it's absolutely crucial. But Allah Ta'ala knows best. I mean, there were times where teachers, I was reading about some of the awliya, some of the righteous teachers of the past, they were so engrossed in their studies. Mufti Azam Pakistan, Maulana Sardar Ahmad Rahmatullah alayh, students of Hadith, their chains of transmission, they all go back to Maulana Sardar Ahmad Rahmatullah alayh, Mufti Azam Pakistan. So anyone who studies Hadith in the Indo-Pak subcontinent or has teachers from Pakistan, all of their chains of transmission go back to Maulana Sardar Ahmad. And I was reading about him not too long ago, and I was reading just a post where someone had mentioned his commitment to the deen and studies, that when he was studying, of course, in those days, 50, 60 years ago, people and students used to travel, all over the country to study the religion, and they'd be far away from their families. So Maulana Sardar Ahmad, he never opened his post that he would receive or letters that his family wrote to him. He didn't even open the letters in case he received bad news, which would mean that he would have to leave his studies. So to avoid even the temptation of being distracted, he never even communicated with his family. That's how committed he was to his studies. And similarly, when you hear about righteous ulama, they would not let anything get in the way of their studies. So Allah Ta'ala gives tawfiq to emulate that a little bit. I mean, nowadays it's really a case of any excuse to miss a lesson. That's what people do. So inshallah, Allah Ta'ala gives us the ability to remain steadfast as best as we can. And there's so many examples I can think of where, family members passed away, but the teachers and the students had lessons, and they continued with their lessons, notwithstanding a tragedy occurred in their homes. I've heard stories of teachers who recently passed away. If their teachers were not well, or their teachers were not present for the lesson, they would drive to their teachers' homes and take them and force them to come and teach. That's the way it used to be. But anyway, so my apologies for not continuing last week. So today we will look at chapter 2, which is the purpose of study. Okay, so the purpose of study, in this, the author mentions and talks about intention, which is always very, very important. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So just bear with me 1 second. Intention is necessary in the study of any discipline, since every deed is rooted in intention, as attested to in the words of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Deeds are measured by their intentions. There is an authentic tradition in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions how many are the deeds which bear the image of the deeds of this world, but then become, through their good intention, among the deeds of the hereafter. And how many are the deeds which bear the image of the deeds of the hereafter, but then become, through their evil intention, among the deeds of this world. Okay, so the author, he starts by talking about the importance of intention here. And it's no secret that actions are based on their intentions. Everybody is aware of this. But sometimes we, notwithstanding the fact we're aware of it, we don't really give intention the due importance that it ought to have. That it is critical that we have the best of intentions whenever we do anything. Okay, whenever we do anything, and when someone's thinking about what their intention is, the real question they're asking themselves is, what is my motivation behind this action? Right? What is it that is motivating me to perform or to take this course of action? Right? And we have to ask ourselves that all of the time, in every regard, in everything that we do. And it's a very individual activity. I mean, there's no one shoe fits all in intention. And, and the beautiful thing is only you know what your intention is. You and Allah Azza wa Jal, that your intention is between you and your creator. And that's a very beautiful thing because, and it links to the reality that only Allah Azza wa Jal can truly value your action or the weight that your action will have on the Day of Judgment is only known to Allah Azza wa Jal. It's exclusive, isn't it? Nobody else can say, oh, this person, his namaz will be very, very heavy on the Day of Judgment. Nobody can say that. Nobody can uh, actually analyze the sincerity of another person's actions for sure. Of course, there are indications that, there's adulterations in intentions, but the reality only Allah knows. And, it really kind of links to the point that, our relationship is with Allah Azza wa Jal. Just as our intention is between us and Allah, um, our relationship, the only relationship that truly matters is between us and Allah, right? And so it's a very individual, it's a very personal thing, and there's a great beauty in that as well. And but we always have to ask ourselves, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and do dua that Allah Ta'ala keeps us sincere because it's very, very easy for shaitan to attack in this regard because it's a very subtle type of attack that can occur. If he stops us from doing good actions, then his job is very easy because he's already got us committing haram. But if we performing good actions, then his point of attack is not if he can't break you in the action, meaning the outward form, he can't break you in that. In other words, you will offer your prayer regardless. Shaitan is not going to be able to stop you. Then what he will do is attack you on the inside, right? He'll attack you in your heart, in your mind, so that your your motivations and the reasons why you're doing what you're doing are not the best or what they should be. Okay. So always think about the intention. We live in a day and age where the pace of life is so quick that we don't really think about what we're doing anymore. We don't do things because we don't have time, and if we do them, then we just launch into them without any due consideration of you know what's the underlying reason. So he starts off, talking about that and, reflecting on the reality that something can be, and this is another thing about, which is very beautiful about intentions, is that through intention, the tiniest action can be the biggest and the most significant on the Day of Judgment. It can be a tiny thing. And that tiny thing, because we did it with such sincerity and a good action, a good intention, it could be through that tiny action, Allah Zawjal allows us to attain salvation on the Day of Judgment. Right? It is such an amazing thing, isn't it? And again, only Allah knows the value of what we're doing. And so it's also a reminder for us that not to ever overlook any actions that we do, right? Or the actions of others. If somebody is really good at doing small things, don't ever overlook that. Don't ever look down on people for doing tiny actions or small actions of goodness, right? And don't ever think that we are too good to undertake the smaller things, the smaller good actions, right? Because we're too good for that, right? Even within that attitude is destruction, right? So always remember it could be the tiny things that save us, right? It could be, and sometimes we always go for the glory, or some of us, we always go for the glory, we go for the headlines, we go for the big things. But what we don't realize, or the big achievements, quote unquote achievements, but what we don't realize is that the big achievements or the bigger actions and the big accolades, they come with massive responsibility, right? They come with massive responsibility. And just as those accolades and those big achievements can lead to great rewards, but similarly and very easily it could be the biggest burden on us on the day of judgment, right? So in other words, the higher the goal, the higher the risk that it could work against us, right? So sometimes, the people who just keep themselves, just sit quietly, just do a little bit, whatever little they can do, and they do that well, and they focus on their intentions, and they just whatever they can be sure, whatever they can be sure that they're doing sincerely, they just stick to that. It's such an amazing thing. Obviously, not everybody uh, has that liberty to kind of stay away from the bigger responsibilities in the deen. Some people can, and it's an amazing mercy from Allah. But similarly, those who then have to, carry out other duties, Allah will reward them. But the more responsibilities we have in the deen, the riskier it is that at any moment shaitan can attack our intentions. So, it's all swings and roundabouts, but it's just a reminder to think about our intentions. So Imam Zarnuji says, it is necessary for the student in his quest for knowledge to strive for the pleasure of Allah, the abode of the hereafter, the removal of ignorance from himself, from the rest of the ignorant, the revival of religion, and the survival of Islam. For the survival of Islam depends on knowledge, and the disciplined life and piety are not complete when there is ignorance. So Imam Zarnuji then he basically sets out some of the intentions that somebody may have. So, the pleasure of Allah, reviving the deen, spreading Islam, removing ignorance from yourself. And there's multiple intentions a person can have. And again, when we reflect on that fact, it just shows how beautiful the deed is in another respect now, that your intention is not, it doesn't have to be this, it doesn't have to be that. It could be a number of things. Could be a number of things, right? Because and that reflects the fact that people have different things that draw them, that motivate them, that draw them near, or who they're attracted by different things. Some people think of Jannah and it makes them get up for tahajjud because they think, oh, Jannah is so amazing, and they've read about Jannah and they're drawn towards Jannah and they're attracted by it. And so Allah Ta'ala makes that as, the intention by which someone does good actions. That's fine. Other people are, they think, Jannah, yeah, if I get Jannah or not, that's fine. But I want the pleasure of Allah. My, heart's desire is to please Allah Azza wa Jal, whether He throws me in the fire or He doesn't. I don't care, but I want Allah to be pleased with me. Right? That's, somebody else might be drawn towards that. Other people might be drawn towards the fact, we have to help our Muslims around the world. We have to help our community, educate them, help them, guide them, remove this ignorance from the community, revive the deen in our societies, right? And so somebody's immediate attention might be drawn towards that. Although, of course, within that is the pleasure of Allah for sure. But someone's immediate intention might be that, and that might be something which triggers the action within them. So people have different things, and Imam Zarnuji is basically setting that out, that somebody may, whatever it is, as long as it's good, then go for it. Okay, so so another aspect of intention is if you find yourself that you perhaps a little bit demotivated, a little bit distant from the religion, you're not quite sure what you want to do. Um, not just think about your intention, find something that motivates you, find something which triggers that emotion within you that says, yeah, this is what I want to, this is something why I want to do something, this is what I want to achieve, of course, related to Allah Azza wa Jal, and then use that as a catalyst to do something, right? So think of something which, draws your heart near, and make that the basis of intention to do your actions. Okay, knowing that ultimately it will lead to Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay, so he mentioned some of those. Okay. One must intend with knowledge to be thankful to Allah for a healthy mind and a sound body, right? So when we are studying the Deen and we are educating ourselves, we must always have the intention of showing gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal through that study. One should not, however, intend to attract people towards himself or reap the vanities of the world or obtain honors from the king and the like. Now, Imam Zarnuji has mentioned that in one line, but that line is so important and it is so rife today. I mean, without judging anybody in particular, sometimes you can't help but think that, when you look at some people's behaviors, you have to ask yourself, why is this person doing this in this way? And, you have husnul dhan for your brothers or your sisters or whoever it may be, whichever public figure it is. But, as many excuses as you can make for a person, eventually you run out of excuses and you think, this person is perhaps and this is you can say it's a guilty or it's a bad thought, but you just can't help but think that this person's in it for themselves. All they want is the name, all they want is the fame. It's almost unavoidable because of how people behave. That's the world in which we live, because we see those are the people who are quote unquote most successful in the dunya, those who are the most self-obsessed maniacs. They're the ones, right? And today it's all about creating that platform for yourself, to create that attention for yourself. It's to, and there's people who are educating. So we're here talking about how to study the deen. People who actually have courses about how to get more followers, how to turn a video into a viral video, and how to make money out of your subscribers, because the more subscribers you have, the more money you make, because money makes the world go around. So how do you make money? Get more subscribers. How do you get more subscribers? By making people attracted to you, right? Look at you. Fame gets you subscribers, subscribers get you money, and so it all comes down to just that that egotistic approach. You see, it is probably the most dominating force in today's world, right? And people are using the same thing for not just for secular things or for obscene things. People are using the same thing for the religion, right? Um, that they are studying the deen purely to gain followers, name, and fame. And some people have even admitted it behind closed doors recently. But when you look at the things like Speaker's Corner, and you see how people interact there, it's literally the gutter. If you want to have a discussion in the gutter, then that's where you go. There's nothing meaningful that happens. There's no meaningful discussions. It's just about everybody will see me there. There's 100 phones there, and it'll go viral, and we'll have an argument, and it'll be controversial, and I'll be famous. That's actually what it's all about. Um, and that's exactly the intention that we must avoid, right? Those kind of things, people don't realize how damning they will be on the day of judgment. That if that is the case, then people are, really going to struggle. Allah knows best, but if the hadith is true, that when somebody goes in front of Allah, Allah will, I think I mentioned this last lesson, that somebody will go in front of Allah and they'll say, "Ya Allah, I did this for you." Allah Ta'ala said, "Why did you do this?" And the person will say, "I did it for you." Allah Ta'ala will say, "You're a liar. You did it." So everybody would say you're brave. So they'd say you're a great reciter, and he'll be dragged to the hellfire. That's a hadith, and that's true. So when you see people who are, quite obviously just doing it for very selfish reasons, they have no fear of Allah. That it's almost like you look at the irony. Someone's talking about the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah, and they're doing it in such a way, but but the very thing that they are preaching, within that, within that, it explains clearly that such intentions will be punished, right? So It's like it's because of that they will be punished as well, right? So they're preaching something, but because of the things they're preaching, they'll be punished, right? So, it'll be used as an evidence against them. So you can never, ever, ever underestimate the importance of sincerity. And if we ever find that our sincerity is compromised, just pull back, right? It's not worth it. If you think an activity is going to compromise your intention or your sincerity, do not do it. Do not do it. That's my personal approach. That's my advice. Right now, some people say, well, I know I'm going off on a tangent a little bit. Some people say, well, okay, my intention might be compromised, but actually what I'm doing is very good. And hundreds of people will watch my video, even though my intention, I think my intention, let's say for argument's sake, someone's making a video and they know their intention is wrong, right? So their intention's wrong, but they know that video will be seen by thousands of people and thousands of people will learn something. So they say, well, look, I can't be sure about my intention, but I know for sure people will benefit, so I should just carry on then. Do you see the point? That the question is, should you pursue a course of action when you know it's beneficial to others, whilst knowing that your own sincerity is compromised in that action? Do you see what I mean? So, I might be teaching you and you're all learning great amounts, and what I teach you could be life-changing, but I'm not sincere in what I'm doing. Should I still do it? No, I've benefited you, I've changed your lives, but I myself might be punished. Or it could be that Allah Azza wa Jal, because I've benefited you all, He might overlook my insincerity and say, look, okay, Cholo, you were insincere, but you helped hundreds of people, so I'll let you off then. So some people, even you can have that discussion and say, well, should you pursue that action notwithstanding your insincerity? Um, I would still say no, because uh, you might be that person who saves other people, but you don't save yourself, right? You might save other people because you did something good. And who knows, Allah may take mercy and allow you in for sure, but it's a big risk to take when you know you're doing something for the wrong reason, um, and continuing to do that, notwithstanding an insincerity. It's a big risk to take. So, Allah and His Messenger know best. Ultimately, again, it's a very personal thing, so people should assess and proceed how they deem appropriate. But Imam Zarnuji clearly said, and it's nothing controversial. Don't do anything to attract people towards yourself, or reap the vanities of the world. Okay, or look for honors, or people's admiration. It's just not worth it. Is it really worth it that 100 people will, like, oh, come and congratulate me and think highly of me or think highly of you? Is it really worth it? What good is people's praise really? Who are the people that they're so great that you pine for their praise, right? People are nothing. Everybody is insignificant, just like the next person, because the only significant uh, entity that we need to please is Allah and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's their praise that we're after, not, the person down the road, or my next door neighbor, or my friend, or my student, or my teacher, or my colleague. I mean, who are they anyway? They're nothing. If we have Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, everybody else is irrelevant. Absolutely 100% irrelevant, whether someone praises you or they don't praise you. You just have to do the right thing, right? So this is how I find the mindset must be, really, if you want to remain sincere, don't worry about anybody else. Don't look for their praise. Their praise is nothing anyway, right? Um, it's worthless. Allah Ta'ala is not going to say, oh, such and such praise you, child, you can go to Jannah. Allah Ta'ala is going to say, look, you wanted him to praise you, you got that praise, so that praise suffices you. That sufficed you in the dunya, you got the praise, now go to the hellfire. That's what Allah Ta'ala will say. You wanted that praise, you got that praise, so there you are, you got what you wanted, but with me, hellfire. Because it's deception. Why is that such a big thing? why would Allah Azza wa Jal be like that? Why is the Hadith Sharif clear in that regard? Because it's deception. When someone's insincere, when they are, it's basically pretending to do something, but actually doing it for something else. And and that is extremely severe. It's a severe offense when it relates to Allah, because that's deception with Allah Azza wa Jal. Because I'm putting my topi, put my, well, not put my beard on, but I have my beard, put my jubba, read my salah, or I'm giving my speech. I'm saying, yeah, I'm doing it for Allah, but actually, it's got nothing to do with Allah. I just want you all to subscribe to my channel. That is deception. It's a lie with Allah. That's why I'll be treated so harshly. And that's why we can't afford to, just get it wrong or just say, Cholo, doesn't matter, right? It does matter. It matters more than anything. And this is the thing that people overlook the most today. Saying, yeah, it's fine. People, look, I'm doing dawah. It's dawah, isn't it? It's, people are learning. It's great. Look, mashallah. And then next thing they start, shaping the eyebrows and God knows what else they do to their faces, right? And talk about guys, they'll have plastic surgery and all kinds. Yeah, but is that what happened? It's just a complete nonsense, and it's just a lie. They're lying to themselves, and that lie will be exposed in the law with Allah Azza wa Jal. Nothing can hide from Allah, right? So I think I started off politely, but slowly but surely, the true colors came out. I couldn't hide it. Okay, so anyway, let's move forward. This is true. Hold on. So, Imam Al-Ansari recited a poem by Abu Hanifa. Whoever strives for knowledge for the hereafter obtains a great gain in righteousness. But he is an utter loss who seeks knowledge to obtain advantage over people. This is true with the possible exception of one who seeks position in order to command what is good and forbid what is evil, and in order to promote the truth and strengthen religion, but never in order to satisfy one's ego and desires. Okay, so Imam Zarnuji, he balances the discussion. Now, all of what I said is fine, right? But there's no absolutes. Okay, always remember when we are balancing principles, it's just that we have to balance between things. Now, if I have an understanding of a particular area of the religion, I'm actually duty bound to share what I know, right? So, and similarly, it might be that I actually have to take a position of authority to lead the prayer because I know certain surahs or I can recite the Quran, right? So the answer to what I've discussed is not to step back from everything and not do anything, right? Out of fear. That's not the answer. The answer is to do lots of dhikr, reflect on why we're doing what we're doing, to be careful, to be diligent, um, and then to proceed with my course of action. That's the answer, right? So all of what I said about people doing things and the response a person should have in their mind isn't to say actually forget that I'm not going to do anything, right? Tempting to do that, isn't it? When you look at the consequences of insincerity, but the correct approach is to correct the intention and to proceed with the action and do dua to Allah Azza wa Jal that a person you remain sincere in everything that we do. And that's what we should do. Okay. And so the Imam is mentioning that seeking a position or a leadership position is not necessarily wrong, provided that a person is doing it, for example, to command the good, that I am taking this position because I have things to share which will be of benefit, and hopefully people rectify their states. Whether they love me or not, I don't really care. Whether they praise me or not, I don't really care. But I feel I have to share these thoughts with people to rectify their states or to warn them. Okay. So, the leaders that we have, we should be on this basis. Okay. Um, all right. Um, let's move forward a little bit. So, yeah, my pages are a little bit mixed up here. Okay, right. So again, he gives an example at the end of the chapter about how Imam Abu Hanifa said to his companions, make your turbans ample and enlarge your sleeves. So he said basically not to put your turbans on, put bigger turbans on. So someone might say, well, that seems to be drawing attention to oneself, dressing in a certain way, having a certain attitude, putting turbans on, you're drawing attention to yourself. But Imam Abu Hanifa said to his students to do this. Why? He said that so that scholarship and its bearers will not be slighted by people. Okay? So, in other words, there is something in our religion called honor and honoring certain positions. Okay? And there's also a concept in our religion of acknowledging Allah's favors. Okay? If Allah has blessed you with something, we are almost duty bound to acknowledge that. Not that people can love us, but so that we can show gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal. Because if I have an angelic voice, which I don't think I do, but okay, I don't have an angelic voice, but if I had a great voice and I could recite the Quran, there's no harm in stating that and utilizing that. In fact, you're duty bound to use that for the right reasons. And then you give thanks to Allah Azza wa Jal. And similarly, if somebody has given you an understanding of the deen and is facilitated for your study, then you should be teaching the deen, right? And it's tahdith and ni'mah that you teach the deen, and you teach that which Allah has facilitated you to learn, right? So, and similarly, when someone is in a position of authority or religious authority, like they're an imam, to wear an imama or to wear certain clothing to honor the position Allah has given you is absolutely acceptable. If you are a teacher and you dress in a certain way, if you are a sheikh and you dress in a certain way, if you are a leader of a community, whatever it may be, and you adopt certain clothing, not because you want to show off, but rather to honor the position Allah has given you, we should do that, right? And that's why, and if you look throughout history, there's always, I mean, it's always been the case that ulama wore certain clothes, certain shuyukh of different tariqas, they wore certain distinct imamas, they wore certain overcoats or whatever it may be. So it's fine, okay? So we mustn't be one-dimensional in our understanding of sincerity and intention. In other words, we shouldn't see somebody with a certain clothing and say, yeah, look, he's showing off. I mean, he might be doing it to fulfill a sunnah, right? And that's why I said right at the beginning, nobody actually knows somebody else's intention. And so we should always do our best to withhold judgment as much as possible. And the comments I mentioned earlier, they're a general observation of the society, right? So I didn't have anybody in mind per se. Okay, but when it comes to individuals and we see certain people acting in certain ways, we should never assume that this person's insincere because actually we don't know. They may have justification for saying what they say and doing what they do. But what we must do is safeguard ourselves and not to do things which would jeopardize our sincerity. But at the same time, fulfill the obligations that Allah has given upon us and the vocations that we have by reflecting, purifying ourselves, and doing dua for sincerity, and then proceeding with that course of action. Okay, so let's look at the next section is the choices in learning. Okay, so we'll look at some of it maybe, and then we'll see how we get on. So another thing that a student of knowledge has to consider are the choices they make in terms of what they're learning. Okay, And this is very important because, there's an ocean of learning out there. There's, hundreds of sciences somebody can learn and can choose to educate themselves in. Um, but, I think it's a fairly obvious but a very important point that the Imam starts with is that a person must start with and choose the branches of learning that are most beneficial to oneself. Right, so look at the things that are most beneficial to you. In other words, if you don't know how to pray, learning how to pray is most beneficial for you. Learning about, the poetry of the dervishes and, the great saints of the past, mashallah, and their miracles is, mashallah, I'm sure it's beneficial, but it's not more beneficial than learning the rules about how to pray when you don't know how to. Okay, it's very common. It's a common sense thing. You'll be surprised how many people there are that don't know how to pray properly, have never studied the fiqh of how to pray, but then every time you see them, be holding books by Sufi dervishes. I mean, how does that even make sense? It's completely ridiculous. Right? Focus on those things, and just a reminder for myself, think about what's most beneficial to me and pursue that first, right? How do you know what's most beneficial? Look at those things which are obligatory. Are we educated in those things which are obligatory or not? Right? If we're not, then we must learn them, okay? And then move on accordingly. One should also select what is essential according to the stage one has reached in his religious development, okay? Which is another very good point that where are we in our journey to Allah Azza wa Jal? Where are we in relation to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now, ulama will know this that after a certain number of years studying and teaching, then ulama sometimes because they've excelled through the ranks so much, then they start writing, then they start compiling poetry, then they do different things. So everybody's on their journey to Allah Azza wa Jal, and recognizing where we are in our journey is also important when we're thinking about what to do, what should I do, right? And not just necessarily what should I study, but what should I do for myself, for my relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So of course everybody has their own answer to that question. And finally, one should choose what will be essential to one in the future. Okay, to not only what I need to do now, but thinking ahead, right? So, for example, if someone's about to get married, then clearly they should think about, okay, well, I need to educate myself about marriage. I need because it will safeguard me in the future. If I'm about to, I don't know, conduct business, or I'm thinking about it in the future, then clearly we have to think about, well, what are the rules of business? Are we able, to look at things which are halal and haram and so on? It is essential to choose established traditions before new things. It is said, hold firm to established traditions while avoiding new things. Beware of becoming engrossed in those disputes which come about after one has cut loose from the traditional authorities. For such disputes keeps the student away from knowledge, wastes away his life, and leaves him with nothing but solitude and hostility. Okay? The prevalence of dispute is one of the indications of the coming of the hour and is the annihilation of knowledge and doctrine. This is supported by the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so in this paragraph, the Imam is basically saying, hold on to establish traditions and sciences and do not engage unnecessarily in disputes, okay, which take somebody away from that. And you might say, well, if I have a dispute or a debate regarding the religion, then that's an exception. But again, the disputes and the argumentation seems to be fraught with just ego. It's just egos, right? If it's very seldom will you find somebody who's actually interested in establishing the truth. Someone may say, well, how can I say that? Well, all you have to do is ask yourself the question, when was the last time you heard any scholar anywhere ever stand up and say, actually, this position that I had, I was incorrect in this position. And now I do tawbah from the view that I held or the statement that I made, and inshallah, I've changed my view because I've heard the refutations of what I've said, and I actually, having thought about it, realized that my position was wrong and that person's right. When was the last time you heard someone say that? Very, very, very rarely. And, it can't be that everybody's always right all of the time. Right? That's not possible, is it? And it also can't be that everybody deep down thinks they are always right in everything. Because if they do, then that's the height of arrogance, then, isn't it? To think that actually I'm always right. And nobody can ever prove me wrong in knowledge or positions. It's a very worrying trend we have, the lack of acknowledgement of mistakes, right? So that's what disputes does to you. It destroy, it just encourages ego, it encourages it, and it just puts fuel on the fire of the ego, which is already out of control anyway. All right, so okay, I think we'll stop there, to be honest with you, because the next paragraph is very interesting. Um, it's about uh, choosing teachers. Okay, so he'll speak about that over the next page. So I will give that a little bit of time because it's a very beautiful thing when Allah Ta'ala blesses you with a righteous teacher. And there's nothing more special in the world than having a teacher or a guide who is truly an example of uh you know of what a believer should be. And when you find someone who can teach you and can guide you and who can help you, that is the biggest gift Allah Azza wa Jal can send to you, because people are misguided because of a lack of teachers, because of a lack of guides. That's the number one reason that that's why the people are misguided, because they don't have teachers who are guided, right? And they don't have guides who can help them. They don't have a hand to hold. Uh, so when Allah Ta'ala blesses you with that, don't underestimate. I mean, and uh, don't be heedless of how great a favor that is, because it's actually a minority of people now who um have reliable teachers. In fact, the number of reliable teachers and guides are fewer and fewer and fewer by generation. And so if Allah Ta'ala has blessed you, and Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed, and I'm sure all of you have as well, in that regard. And because ultimately we owe everything to our teachers and our guides, it goes without saying. So inshallah, I'll talk about that more next week. And Imam Zanruji mentions a couple of points in that chapter as well. So Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq, inshallah, to understand what we've discussed and to reflect on that. And Allah Ta'ala give us istiqamah and sincerity in everything that we do. Ameen. ودعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاك الله خير.
No problem.